Okay, so for the other part of our lesson is we're going to find our roots or our zeros or our solutions, whatever word you want to use it, our x-intercepts for the parabola when we're in the vertex form. So we found it, and we've gone through when we're in the standard form, finding our roots or our zeros or our solutions, but now we're going to do it when we're in our vertex form. And we did a little bit of this before we had left school, actually. Um, so right here we have our vertex form. F of x is equal to x plus 5 squared minus 36. Remember, when it's in this form, we actually have the vertex, the coordinates for the vertex are given, the h and the k. H is the x, k is the y of our vertex. And remember, it's the opposite of what this sign says, right? So this is a negative, but it's actually going to be a positive. And in the prior video, they had gone through that. So the question that I'm going to ask you is, what is the vertex here? So what's the vertex? All right, so the vertex is going to be 5, comma, negative 36. All right, so that's our vertex. This is a little bit of review from the last time, the last video. Now we're going to run through and solve this out. So first step, we need to, let me get rid of this. We need to set the equation equal to 0 since we're trying to find the x-intercepts. And remember, the x-intercepts are where the parabola crosses the x-axis, and the value of y on the x-axis is 0. So f of x, which is another way to write y, we're going to make that 0. So let's put that over there. So now we have 0 is equal to x plus 5 squared minus 36. So I'm going to add 36 to both sides. Opposite side of the equal sign, opposite operation. We add 36 to both sides, and we end up with 36 equal to x plus 5 squared. So this is the part you guys might remember from before we left school. We were having a little bit of trouble with this, but remember, if we want to get rid of a square, we can take the square root, right? And remember, the square root is like having an exponent of 1/2, so it'd be like 2 over 2 gets rid of it, right? But all you got to remember is when we take the square root, we square this side. We take the square root of this side. The square root actually, we could draw it here, but they eliminate each other. This having a square and then taking the square root of it, cancel each other out, and we're just left with what was inside there. So we have square root of 36 equal to x plus 5. All right, now whenever we write this, we always got to remember to put our plus or minus sign in front of that square root because we're going to have two roots in this case. So we take the square root of 36, it's a perfect square. So we have plus or minus 6 is equal to x plus 5. Next step is we're going to just solve for x. So we got to do the opposite operation. We're going to subtract 5 from both sides. And when we do that, we're going to put that minus 5 in front of the plus and minus sign. So we're not going to combine them right now. We're going to put that minus 5 in front. So we end up with negative 5 plus or minus 6 is equal to x. So if we were to solve this out, remember we can sort of do like that T diagram. We can say, okay, x is equal to negative 5 plus 6. And we can say x is equal to negative 5 minus 6. All right, so when we do that, we get negative 5 plus 6, we get a positive 1, so x is equal to 1. And then negative 5 minus 6, we get negative 11. All right, so those are our two roots, our two zeros, our two solutions. That's where, when x is equal to 1 and x is equal to negative 11, that's where our parabola is crossing the x-axis, and those are our x-intercepts. All right, we're going to do one more. We'll do another problem. I think I'm going to stop right now. You guys will answer a question on Ed Puzzle, and then we'll move on to the next one. All right, so for our next example, we have solve the equation 3 times x minus 5, or 3 times, yeah, the quantity x minus 5 squared minus 18. So if I asked you what the vertex was, I want you to enter that now. All right, so for our vertex, we're going to end up having 5, negative 18. Okay. So what I want to do, first step, I didn't write all our steps down over here, but we're going to set this side equal to 0 because we're trying to find our roots or our x-intercepts. So 0 is equal to the expression. Next step is I'm going to want to take this 18, this minus 18, and bring it to the other side. So I want to add 18 to both sides. So I'm going to do that here. I'm going to end up with 18 is equal to 3 times x minus 5 squared. Next step is I want to get this x minus 5 squared all by itself. So I can take the square root of it. So I'm going to divide both sides by 3. Oh, and I should have had a line there. I'm sorry. Probably did that up above too. So I'm going to divide. I just want to show that we're dividing it. So when I divide it, I end up with 6 is equal to x minus 5 squared. All right, so now I have this square I got to get rid of. I'm going to do the square root. Remember, when I take the square root of this side, that square root and the square root will cancel each other out. So I'm going to end up with the square root of 6 plus or minus the square root of 6 equal to x minus 5. And then I want to bring my 5 over to the other side. So when I do that, I get plus 5 to both sides. I'm going to put that plus 5 in front of the square root of 6. And we get 5 plus or minus the square root of 6. And we can leave it like that. We don't have an integer, so we could, with the integer, we could figure it out pretty easily. We can just leave it in this form, 5 plus or minus the square root of 6. All right, so I'm going to stop, have you guys do an Ed puzzle, answer the question, and then we're going to move on to an exit ticket.